This video is going to tackle the specific movements of the trail wrist throughout the swing, the key moments through the swing that you need to be aware of, and just the general key motion of this wrist, which a lot of the time doesn't get talked about as much as the lead wrist. However, the trail wrist does not simply move in the opposite direction of the lead wrist, which can often be the way people might think about it. And there's a logic to that I could understand and follow, but unfortunately that's not exactly how it works. Let me present to you the movements of the trail wrist and the key moments that you should be looking for throughout the swing. We're going to use the live avatar as we go through this to help you see and understand some of these pieces, and I'm really just going to highlight to you 2 or 3 key areas that you should be paying attention to. The first thing to note in a neutral grip, so I'm using a very standard neutral grip that you would typically see better players presenting with, and the grip does matter a lot here. As I present with my neutral grip, I've actually got a small amount of extension in this trail wrist. A lot of the time, because the lead wrist is slightly extended at setup, you might expect the trail wrist to be flexed. It's not. These hands are almost pushing against each other, and some of that opposing force where the lead hand's turned slightly on top and then the trail hand is also turned on top of that helps to create this extension, and it helps to create a certain amount of wrist structure and stability with the hold of this golf club that's really evident in good ball strikers. The grip and the way you place your hands on the club should not be underestimated. So note that there is a small amount of extension in this trail wrist at setup. And I'll just mention at this point that ideally there's also more extension in the trail wrist at impact. That is increasing the angle between the trail forearm and the shaft when you hit the ball. That again is very consistent among good ball strikers. So a couple of things there for you to start out with. There is some extension in the trail wrist at setup, and there should be more of it as you hit the ball. Now, as you move into the backswing, what I'd like you to understand is this trail wrist, let's just take a look at the number on the avatar. There's like 7 or 8 degrees of extension there. So a small amount of angle. And what I just want you to notice, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to isolate this trail wrist and show you that movement of extension. So bending the trail wrist backwards all the way there to 48 degrees. I would tell you that during the backswing, if you can learn to progressively, incrementally and progressively increase that throughout the entire backswing, you'll be onto something pretty good here. I've already hit a shot here into the screen earlier with this this wrist graph that you're seeing on the screen is a shot that I hit with the HackMotion sensor on my trail wrist. And I want you to just see between the address bar, which is right here where my finger's scrolling, the line there is going to work all the way to the top of the backswing bar. And you see how that slope is fairly consistently upward. It's moving upward at a relatively consistent rate. There's not too many spikes or plateaus. There's a little bit of a plateau once it reaches the top. But overall, I'm progressively and very gradually, consistently adding extension throughout the backswing. That's in contrast to how the lead wrist would work. If you've watched the lead wrist video, you'd know that most of the lead wrist motion changes in the first part of the swing here, and then throughout the second part of that swing, this lead wrist stays very stable, very flat. It doesn't do a lot. The work is coming from the trail wrist. And I often think people focus heavily on the lead wrist, miss an enormous amount of value and benefit that they could get if they really knew how this trail wrist worked. So just to show you in live mode, we've got 5 degrees of extension, and at the top, I've got 53 degrees of extension. That's me progressively bending this trail wrist all the way back. That's going to put me in a great spot. I know that my lead wrist is relatively flat at this point, which is consistent with what I would want, but my trail wrist is flexed 53 degrees. That's something to try and improve and incorporate into your swing. You can even just practice that motion in isolation. Just bending that wrist back and then adding the club and bending that wrist back will start to teach you how to manage the club face from an open and closed perspective. But this is a tremendous power source that people are missing out on if you don't really know how to load that trail wrist. So just understand throughout the backswing, you're continuously adding extension until the point where you basically maximize it out. And getting around 50 degrees of extension would be a good number to aim for. So again, try this without a ball. You don't have to hit shots to start with. Just follow the avatar, gradually see that number increasing, 25, 30, 40, 50. And then at the top there, I kind of reached that point where there's no more range of motion. And that on the graph was where you saw that just begin to plateau ever so slightly. Another really key area here as we start the transition. So that's going to be along this part of the journey here of the graph where it looks like it's relatively flat, but please don't be fooled. Notice that there is a slight raise of the graph in the early downswing. That means my wrist increases very, very slightly, but very, very significantly, increases the amount of extension as I transition. I mentioned in the lead wrist video that every good golfer I've ever come across moves the lead wrist towards some degree of flexion as they transition, as they start down. That would be consistent here with a trail wrist that adds extension as the club's starting to move down. So the wrist is bent back almost to the max, but as you pull on the club, you have to pull on the club in a very specific way that increases the extension in the downswing. Just notice, even as I just rehearse that and demonstrate that, I go from around 40 degrees of extension to around 48, 50. That's me getting to the top. Trail wrist is bent backwards, extended, but as I start down, I just increase that bend as much as I can. A little bit of that's helped by the momentum, the weight of the club. I can use some of that weight of the club in transition, but you may very well need to, and I would encourage you to try and be very conscious that as you start down, you'd twist this club. That again is an extension of the motorcycle drill, which is often discussed as in the lead wrist as bending it towards flexion, but equally the motorcycle drill is very valuable and very valid with the trail wrist. So feel like you twist the throttle. In fact, I prefer the motorcycle concept in the trail wrist because it's actually more consistent with the way that you would twist the throttle of a motorcycle. You'd move the wrist towards extension, which is what I'm asking you to do here. If you can bend that trail wrist back in the backswing and increase it in early downswing, you're putting this club shaft and club head into a wonderful spot for delivery. What happens after that happens very quickly. You'll see on the graph the incredibly steep curve there of the wrist going from maximum extension and having all of that thrown out by the time we hit the ball. Now, ideally not all of it's gone by the time we hit the ball, but in the poorest golfers you will have lost that wrist angle. And you'll even see in the shot that I hit there, I had less extension. My wrist had already moved past zero and towards flexion by the time I hit the ball. That's not consistent with what I want to do, and it's not consistent with what the best ball strikers do. Ideally, we would take that bent trail wrist at the top, increase it in the early downswing, and then effectively what most golfers need to feel is they hang on to that trail wrist extension for dear life. You hang on to that bent angle in the back of the wrist there for as long as you can. In your mind, it may well need to feel like it goes way beyond impact. In fact, I would tell you almost certainly that that's what you'll need to feel. If you're somebody who struggles to retain the sufficient amount of trail wrist extension at impact, you don't just need to feel a little bit more extension, you need to feel a lot. I'm going to try and hit one of those for you. Staying consistent with this bending back in the backswing. So the general pattern here is just think about bending the trail wrist back all the way to the top throughout the backswing, increasing it in the downswing, and then holding on to it as you go through impact. Knowing that in reality this is really coming out, and we want it to. We just want to time the point at where this comes out so we get maximum energy transfer from the club to the ball, whilst at the same time still managing the contact and, most importantly here, managing the club face control. Quick question for you. Did you know that 80% of your golf ball's direction comes from the club face angle at impact? And it's your wrists that control that angle. If you want to hit straighter shots and add more distance to your game, then check out the link in the description below. If we get this off and out of sync, we're going to find it's difficult to hit the ball in the direction that we want to. So add the extension, increase the extension, hold on to the extension. That one I didn't hold on to it for long enough. That ball's going to overdraw again, a little bit too much hook. I can feel that. Again, the numbers are very consistent. You can even look at that graph. We've got the gradual increase in the rise of the graph in the backswing. That's the extension. We've got it increasing in transition slightly, then very quickly coming out to the point where at impact I hadn't managed to retain it. And that's the club face getting rolled over and the ball hooking to the left. I'm going to really emphasize and exaggerate one here just to prove to you the extremity of the feel. The feel has to be so extreme to make even a small change here to the numbers. So go back, bend the wrist back, and then just hold on. Nope, still let it go. And what I'm fighting with there, partly talking to the camera and trying to manage this, but what I want to sort of share with you there is I'm fighting what every single one of you is fighting when you swing this club, that the force of this club wants to get thrown out. And your job is to manage that force by being skillful enough and have trained enough to keep this trail wrist bent back. You got a little closer on that one. I'm definitely going to do it on this one, promise you. So bend it back and hold on to it. Closer, you see those numbers are getting closer. I definitely can do a better job than that. So bend the trail wrist back all the way to the top and then hold on to it in the follow through. For a lot of you it will need to feel, and that was the first one there where the amount of trail wrist extension at setup was the same at impact, so I didn't lose it that time, I just managed to sustain it. But in trying to do that, I had to really feel like there was no release and no throw of this club at all. If I don't think about that consciously, you already saw how that club gets thrown out. And if I'm doing that, I can promise you the same thing's happening to you as well. So check your numbers, know what you're supposed to do. You've got a roadmap now for the travel of this trail wrist throughout the backswing, the downswing, and then into impact. You know what it should be doing. If you need to change those numbers, you need to make sure you're emphasizing that motion and exaggerating it to the best of your ability. Knowing what it should look like is one thing, then being able to demonstrate it is another thing. In between those two extremes, or in between those two worlds, lives a world where you can make rehearsal swings using the live avatar and really trying to notice how your body feels and how your wrists and arms feel in order to create the certain numbers on the screen that I've shared with you today. So take that advice, go away, pop your HackMotion on your trail wrist, put the screen up and follow the avatar, adding the extension in the backswing, increasing that extension in the downswing, and then training yourself to feel like you hold on to that for as long as you can until impact. Once you've hit that ball, the forces and the speed of this swing are going to throw out those wrist angles anyway. It's not about holding on to these forever and never letting this club go. It's about delaying the release and delaying the throw so that it happens at a time that allows you to be better, more consistent ball striker, hit the ball further, and as I said, control the direction of your shots. That's really the function of the swing. I hope you found this video useful and informative. You can go away and practice this trail wrist motion in isolation with or without a ball. I'd encourage you to start without and then transfer that to a golf ball. Look at your data, see what needs to change, and place your attention on that part of your swing. If you'd like to learn more about HackMotion and wrist training drills and advice that you can take, then you can click on the link that's going to be in the description of this video, where it will take you to further HackMotion wrist training videos.